Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on a little watercolor painting, and right at the beginning here you can see that I'm working on the sketch, and then eventually I'll work a little bit on the color comp, and then we'll jump right into actually doing some watercolor painting. But the painting that I'm working on is the exclusive postcard for August. If you'd like to get this, and the only way to get this as a print is to go sign up for a $10 tier or up over on my Patreon. That's whether you're in the US or international. And yeah, there's a link down in my description that'll take you there. I really had a lot of fun painting this one, and I liked the challenge a lot, which I'm going to be talking about in a bit. But yeah, the whole concept or kernel of an idea behind this piece was that I wanted to work on more pieces that incorporate animals. So I asked my patrons over on Patreon through a poll which animal I should work on, and I got wolf. That was the one that won, so I went ahead with that one, obviously. but yeah, I want to talk a bit about facing your fears when it comes to art. That is definitely something that I've been really trying to embrace in some ways and failing in others. But yeah, one of the big things that when I really just look over the art that I do and I look at the things that are missing, animals in my pieces is definitely something that I have such a strong desire to have, but I am very scared of doing it. And I didn't really realize why it never happens, or rarely happens, I should say, until I was working on this piece and it was sketch time and I had committed to doing a piece with an animal in it. And that's when I just got so scared of working on the sketches and the thumbnails, the ideas, because I'm completely uncomfortable with drawing animals, and not just animals, but I like being able to, or I like the idea of including people and animals together. So figuring out compositions that have an interesting animal form combined with a person in some way turns out to be really kind of difficult. At least it is for me, because I'm not used to it. So yeah, I think that really, for a lot of people, that's the root of fear when it comes to art, is, or specific elements in art, is that it's something that we're totally uncomfortable with. It's a foreign concept to us. So while we may have a desire to create something like that, whether you're interested in creating something that's closer to realism, or more symbolism in your work, or something that is more stylized, if you've been creating work in a very specific way of doing it for a long time, it can be really, really scary to look at a different approach to it and a different way of doing it, especially while it may not be helpful for growth, but when you have a process for how to create artwork and you're happy with the outcome that usually ends with that approach, it can feel like you're just jumping into dark waters where you don't actually know what's going to happen. You're going to put in this effort and time, or you're going to find out that you're actually really bad at that thing that you are interested in, and then you're going to be unhappy with the ending. But obviously the only way to really overcome that is to actually practice doing that thing that you want to do, that you're scared of doing. And for me, that's incorporating animals, but not just drawing the animals. That's what really hit me, is that when I was working on these thumbnails, I want to have really dynamic, interesting animals. And when I was looking at all the references, those tend to be when the animals were in motion or really energized, but mostly in motion in some way. And haven't really figured out exactly how to pair that with a human person, because an animal that's in motion tends to be much faster than a person, and I don't usually like drawing people in motion. And yeah, I don't know, it's just an interesting mixture of challenges to work through for me, for figuring out how to incorporate these, or figuring out how to maybe more figure out what a dynamic animal looks like for my work that fits with the projection that I want to do with my work. Anyways, I don't need to keep rambling on about that, but I think that the key thing that helps me when I'm facing something like this is that I need to remember to be kind to myself. I need to remember that it's okay to fail, it's okay to struggle with something, but it's not okay to not try. So for this, since it was a conceptual thing that was my biggest roadblock at first, I needed to sit down and sketch thumbnails. I had to get into the mindset, kind of like when I was in school, where there was a requirement of how many thumbnails I had to do, and I just had to get those done, that many done. I didn't give myself a specific number, but I needed to remind myself that I don't have to be able to sit down and have a perfect solution in that first sketch and then be able to move on and make this piece. I needed to be able to just sit down and force myself to work through this issue until I got something that felt like it worked and kind of flowed and made sense. And eventually, after doing several, maybe like 10 thumbnails, I started to get a better idea of what I wanted this piece to feel like. It helped me to work through what like preconceived notions I had attached to wolves, and it helped me to move past that into something that was a little bit more my style and what I wanted to do. And I never would have gotten to that point if I had just given up after the first or second thumbnail failure. I would obviously have either moved on and done something else or just stopped. I wouldn't have been able to get to that. So yeah, that's the main thing that I think really helps me to work through that initial fear, is just to remind myself that failure is required to be able to learn a new skill. I have to try something that's not going to work. And if it happens to work, then I guess I shouldn't have been that afraid of it. And if it doesn't work, then it means that I'm on the right path, that I'm figuring it out. And another thing that really helps me a lot when I'm trying to work through my fears is reanalyzing what requirements I've given myself. I find that a lot of times when I'm trying to work on a piece and I'm really struggling, when I actually break it down, there are sometimes these requirements that I've given myself that I feel like I have to do for this piece for it to be successful. And I didn't even intend to do that, but I put these things there. Like sometimes I'll be working on a piece and I'll feel like, okay, well, I did a portrait for the last piece, so I need to have a full body in this one, and I need to have this type of thing, or this type of color palette, or this mood, or whatever. And then when I'm working through it, that core concept just doesn't work, and it ends up being this huge struggle. But really, the issue wasn't that concept that I was trying to work on. It was working on that with all of these restrictions that weren't necessarily helpful in any way. So like for this one, I found that I was really nervous about, again, how to incorporate a dynamic, moving animal figure. And I realized the first step to being more comfortable drawing animals and painting them is to just do it. So I should simplify that. I should do an animal figure that is easier to incorporate with a human person and is easier to get that initial silhouette of the character, of the animal, I should say. And so I simplified it down to showing part of a very huge animal, but it ended up being more easier to approach, to think through the concept and the composition, and it became easier to incorporate a human character to this, which is actually a character that I put in my Inktober's, I think from last year, a couple of times in several pieces. So it was really fun to incorporate that again. But anyways, simplifying that down, taking out some of those restrictions allowed me to actually make some momentum in conquering my fear and working on this thing that I am uncomfortable with to begin with, and then just making it easier to work on it. But I would love to hear from you guys. What are things that you are currently struggling with as far as being afraid to work on, if you'd like to talk about that? Or what are things that you've done that helps you overcome that? Mostly I find that it's okay and healthy to be afraid of something, but it's not okay or healthy to let that stop you from working on something. And And I found that it was stopping me. It was stopping me from drawing animals, incorporating them into my pieces, especially when I had an initial idea that incorporated an animal and then I would shy away from it as I started sketching it and doing thumbnails. So yeah, I think approaching it head on and being able to just accept that it's going to be hard and it's new and it's challenging has helped me a lot. I'm still struggling with it. There are a lot of elements in art that I am honestly afraid of, but I want to attack them. I want to be able to work through that. And like I mentioned earlier, the only way to get this print is through my Patreon postcard tiers. So that is the $10 tiers and up. And yeah, I loved working on this piece. I'm really excited to send it out to my patrons. There's a link down in the description if you're interested in checking that out. I also have the original painting available at my shop though, so there is a link to the shop down there as well. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are absolutely incredible. I can't thank you enough for your support. So yeah, thank you guys. That is about it for today though. So I will be back next time with some more art content.